are excited to be joined by the Honorable Eric Holcomb, Governor of Indiana, and the Honorable Kristi Noem, Governor of South Dakota. The discussion will be moderated by SCSP Senior Policy Advisor, Dr. PJ Makish. PJ, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and greetings to everybody that's viewing online. I'm PJ Makish, and it is an honor to be here to moderate this dialogue with Governors Noem and Holcomb. We want to first just start by thanking you. We want to thank you not only for being here today, but we want to thank you both for your distinguished service. Shouldering the leadership of a state is not for the faint of heart. And the country goes forward because citizens like you step up and do it. So we just want to thank you sincerely from the project for your distinguished years of public service. The purpose of this panel on regional innovation is to get to where the rubber meets the road at the states. It doesn't happen in DC, it happens in the states. All tech is local. And so we want to outline, in some sense, what's happening in the states and then turn our thoughts almost to an action agenda of what the governors think we should do to max innovation power in the United States from here and also to our allies and partners. So first of all, just governors to open up, could you take us to your states and transport us there? Tell us how the tech innovation ecosystem is going and any ideas that you have. So Governor Noem, please take us to South Dakota.
Absolutely. Well, good evening. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you, PJ, for moderating this discussion. It's an honor for me to be here and talk about emerging technologies with all of you. I don't know if any of you in the room have been to South Dakota before. Oh, look at that. I love it. Perfect. Well, listen, our state is a small state. When my background is I'm a farmer and a rancher. Ran several businesses as well before I got into government and politics, and got involved in government and politics because of tax policy that had me showing up at different meetings, but looked at our state when I was running for governor, and our state, frankly, was in a shape where it was declining. People were moving out of our state. Our industries are not diversified. Our number one industry in our state is agriculture, but it also is 8 times larger than our next industry, which is tourism. And so I knew that if I was going to run for governor, governors are CEOs. The governors set an agenda, they make decisions every day on what they can do to help the people in their state be more successful and be able to be innovative. I campaigned on bringing the next big industry to our state, that we needed an industry that brought higher paying jobs, that didn't overwhelm our infrastructure, didn't cause me to have to build a bunch of new roads and bridges and frustrate people with overwhelming traffic, and that cybersecurity and technology would be the best opportunities for us. We're also located in the center of the country, which, looking at a lot of our national security threats, which I had served on the Armed Services Committee when I was in Congress, I recognize the safety that comes from being a state in the middle of the country. We're not subject to a lot of the outside influences that come from hacking attempts from subs and ships offshore. There's not very many coastlines near South Dakota, if you haven't noticed. We don't have a lot of population centers, which hide some of the surveillance that is sometimes conducted on our national security resources that we have, and that we also are strategically located at a place where a lot of our responses to our threats from other countries would be addressed. Knowing that we had a partnership with Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota as well that is getting the next generation bomber, the B-21, that platform will be located in our state, gave us a strategic opportunity, not only to bring in the kind of research and partner with our universities in a way that we hadn't before, also bring those higher paying jobs, partner with private businesses that were looking for that kind of diversity, and also be a part of our national security defense plan for the next 50 to 75 years was really, really important. So that was really what I campaigned on, and we have gone and grown leaps and bounds since then. We have doubled the size of Dakota State University's cybersecurity school, which Dr. Griffiths is here with us today as well. She is brilliant, and I'm so proud to partner with her in that. We have a new educational partnership with U.S. Army Command as well. We have businesses that have partnered with the build-out that is happening at Ellsworth Air Force Base. We have contractors that are moving in, and they're all focused on AI and partnering and utilizing that in a way that will really help us use these security concerns to bring forward new technologies and diversity. Our other industries that we're building on is in agriculture and in healthcare. Financial services is our third largest industry, so that's also an area that we are building out these types of platforms and innovation. And I'm really proud of the fact that in South Dakota, our science and tech industry, since I've been governor, has grown over 25%, and the GDP in that region has gone up 36% in just the last year. So there's incredible growth in our state, and I think it's because we've been nimble. We've been small, we've been nimble, we've partnered with people in new ways, and when there's new technologies and discoveries out there, we've been aggressive at going after them, recruiting them, and bringing them to our state.
Fantastic, Governor. Thank you. Sir, please take us to Indiana. Tell us how tech's working there.
Very similar story in terms of growth and momentum. South Dakota and Indiana, if you look at capital investment and population growth and employment growth, we show strong on those momentum indexes. And those are things that we've been measuring since I got there and even long before. Our story also traces back. We've always been in this innovation hunt, and I think about my own family history. My great-grandfather immigrated to this country, ended up in southern Indiana. He was, and his two brothers, blacksmiths. And he did in about 1880, they opened their blacksmith shop. And in 1948, he did an interview with the newspaper, and he was asked about the future of shoeing, horseshoeing, and what it would be in 1948. And he said, well, the good Lord gave it and replaced it with rubber. Right, and he said, you know, you look out and you see these brick buildings, they won't burn as fast as the stick buildings. He said, who knows, you know, what the future holds. This boy here, he's already making things with his hands, like airplanes. That boy was my 6-year-old father, who went on to Purdue University and retired from Rolls-Royce, trying to make aircraft fly higher and faster. His whole life, right on it. Learned it from a dirt floor, 1948. So you think about that, you know, history, and then you think about the Indy 500, which I don't know if anybody's been to Mount Rushmore and the Indy 500, but 2 bucket list items.
For sure.
And you think about that, that was a test track. Back, you know, in 1909, it was a test track. The first race was 1911, but it was all about testing engines. And so when you think about where we are today, and similarly, you know, our 7-8 sectors that are so important to us, we're the #1 manufacturing state per capita in the country. And that's not just 5 auto OEMs or jet engines or fuselages. It's Eli Lilly, Life Sciences, and Roche, and, you know, Honda, Toyota, Subaru, General Motors, Stellantis, and all those supply chains. And ag, which is ag biotech now, or bioscience, and manufacturing is advanced manufacturing. So if you're not attaching tech to whatever sector you're talking about, you're dying, you're not growing. And so for us as a state, it's how do we assist or cultivate that ecosystem to grow it even faster, and being nimble and paying attention to speed, to market, and helping folks scale, staying out of the way when it's 90% of the, you know, chore, but helping those different sectors, including hospitality and construction, continue to keep up and not just survive but thrive. And that's why we kind of, as a state, jump off the map, and why tech is such a predominant sector in and of itself now. Salesforce, you know, has their name on the tallest building in the state of Indiana, and they've doubled in size since they came, from 1,200 to 2,400. And it's just, you know, continued to spread, but it's how do we bring venture capital to bear? How do we create more research? Christy mentioned our universities, Notre Dame, Purdue, IU. We've got some world-class universities as well, Rose-Hulman. And how do we bring that R&D to bear into the market so it's close and you create density? And that's why you see a state like South Dakota and Indiana leading the way.
That's something that we'd love to talk about, is how innovation is happening in your states. Before we do that, I think everybody would love to hear how both of you became aware that your states are involved in a bigger competition. If you were to go back in your career of public service, you each became aware in your own way about how ultimately your states were in a bigger game. And Governor Holcomb, love to start with you about that journey and how you came to it.
Well, I had the benefit of having worked for one of my predecessors for about 10 years before I had gray hair. I worked for Governor Mitch Daniels, and so I was out and about paying attention, obviously involved, and knew what, how elaborate our ecosystems were. And obviously, when we're out job hunting or career hunting or CapEx hunting or wage hunting, we're looking at snapping those pieces of the puzzle together. In a state like Indiana, 2 years ago, we set our all-time CapEx record through our Department of Commerce at $8.7 billion 2 years ago. Last year, we did $22.2 billion. This year, we're on track to break that. If you look at how that shakes out, about 33% of that's foreign direct investment. And so if you're not snapping the pieces together, if you're not concerned about onshoring and reshoring, and not just in time, but just in case, look around the world, then you're going to be left behind. It's a small, small world, and time flies. And if the market is demanding speed, and so the state has to be a partner in that and harness that synergy and offer certainty and stability and predictability and continuity, hopefully. So I was aware early on, but I'm trying to increase that momentum even more.
Governor Noem, when we had the privilege to visit South Dakota as a project, you told us a story about countries that are less friendly to the United States and how you became aware of their involvement even in your state. Would you please tell us that story?
Well, my background is in farming and ranching, and when I was in college, my dad was killed in an accident. He was 49 years old at the time. We had one of the larger farming operations in the state of South Dakota, a cow-calf operation too, and so a lot to take over. My family ended up changing a lot. I quit college, came home, became the general manager of the operation, made a lot of changes. We immediately were hit with estate taxes, which made it difficult to keep our business because at that time, the estate tax rate was 55% of everything that you owned. My dad, of course, as a farmer and rancher, had a lot of land, machinery, and cattle, but not a lot of money in the bank. So that caused me to start showing up at meetings. It made me angry that we had this tragedy in our family, and all of a sudden we were threatened with losing our family business. So I started going to different government and policy meetings. At the time, the U.S. Senate Majority Leader was Tom Daschle from South Dakota, if you remember. And so talking to him quite a bit, and he ended up appointing me to a committee that oversaw the federal farm programs in the state within USDA. I realized, though, as I was involved in agriculture and policy and farming and ranching with my husband, Brian, who's with me today over here as well, that seeing that so much foreign investment was coming into South Dakota, that they were, especially countries such as China, were buying up our fertilizer companies. They were buying up our chemical companies. I saw them systematically buying up our food chain and our supply mechanisms, and I knew they were doing it through all my discussions and work in policy to control us, and realized that we not only had to be competitive with those next door to us and our states surrounding us, but also with other countries that were consistently going out there buying up our supply chains, but then also competing with us on the research side, stealing our intellectual property, penalizing us through trade agreements, and got heavily engaged in that. So that was my background when I started to serve in the legislature, and then eventually ran for Congress and served there for 4 terms too. Being on Armed Services, but then also the Ways and Means Committee, really educated me a lot to how other countries are coming in and buying up influence over us, our research, and then also our manufacturing systems, and then even in South Dakota and in our surrounding states, buying up our land. And that's something we've been aggressive on, is while we want to be innovative, while we want to continue to consider investment and put it to work for us, we also need to make sure that they are people who want to see us be successful and will respect our intellectual property and our research and give us a level playing field going forward as well. So that is something that there's a balance there. And I know as you've had some discussions today that you've talked about having government having a role in some of the emerging technologies that are out there. There also needs to be a role that allows that nimble activity without overregulation, but does protect us from those enemies who want to use our data to go after us and eliminate us. They will use our data. Who wins the AI race is whoever has the most access to data. And that data, which we are allowing them to collect off of us and to use against us in the future, is extremely dangerous. So this competitive environment that we have on a worldwide scale is something that we need to open our eyes to. I tell people consistently, you know, I have seen countries such as China have a 2,000-year plan to wipe out the United States of America or to control the world again. I'm not even sure the American people are willing to be inconvenienced anymore. You know, we had this discussion with TikTok. Our state was the first state that actually banned the use of TikTok on state devices because of the data collection that they have. After that, we saw 30 other states take action and the federal government on government devices. And, you know, I still have my brother-in-law send me TikTok videos sometimes that I'm like, dude, don't send me TikTok videos. You know, if anybody, like, I feel like I'm the poster child for not liking TikTok, but people still send them to me all the time. So that's what I think our attention span is short in this country, and I'm hoping through an educational process we will remember that we are in a competitive environment. We're in a competitive environment with those who just naturally want to economically compete with us, but also those countries who want to destroy us and we need to go into this eyes wide open and make sure we set ourselves up to succeed.
You know, there's times where we've woken up to that competition, right? And there's times where the nation just unified and came together on Manhattan or Apollo. You could say maybe we're doing that with CHIPS Act now, and that there's that time where the unity happens and we start competing. We'd love to use the rest of our time to start talking about your thoughts on that agenda. And first of all, to unleash regional innovation for everything that you've learned about your ecosystem, you know, what are some things that you both think are going right? I mean, just to start with what's going right, what is happening between the government and states or any other institutions that you think is what right looks like?
Well, number one, talking with each other. I mean, as you all know in the room, I'm a Republican. We have President Joe Biden, obviously, is of the Democratic Party and running the administration. But what I do appreciate is that they're willing to have conversations with us, that I've been able to have access to cabinet secretaries and talk about ways that we could partner, and even a little bit of flexibility in some of the programs to how maybe the way that they have written a piece of legislation or they've put out guidance doesn't work for our state. Could we ever make an appeal to have some changes to utilize those dollars in a different way? And even allowing us in some instances to not access grants that didn't work for us and have them understand that and maybe reallocate dollars or resources somewhere else. So I think that is really what makes America special, is we aren't a one-size-fits-all for governors. Governors know what their states need. We're on the ground there. Our perspective is very different than policymakers. For instance, the CHIPS Act, while wonderful, it was written in such a way that South Dakota, on those regional technology hubs, we don't qualify. We're not a populated enough area to even qualify for those dollars. So that's a huge disservice to our state, and I've asked them if they would consider figuring out a way to open that up to every single state so we could access the ability to do that. I have incubators in my state now that I'm using to partner with different entities, but I would love to have that provisions in the CHIPS Act apply to our state as well and not just prioritize the more urbanized areas. For instance, our Dakota State University, we've doubled the size of our cybersecurity school. We are only one of 10 schools that have designations from NSA and Homeland Security on cyber defense, cyber operations, cyber research. We are the first university in the country to have a PhD program offered in cyber operations. It is super innovative what we have going on there, and bringing in 27 different research projects and 24 different universities into our Sanford Underground Lab that's doing medical research and high energy physics research. And what we're doing in South Dakota is some of the biggest research projects that the world has ever seen. I need to be nimble in order to keep facilitating that kind of an environment, which is making companies want to come and investment come as well.
Yeah, I think echo everything she just said, but Also, I think a continued, what's going right, a continued approach to have states cooperate, to think regionally, certainly trying to do that within my state, but some of the first dollars to come out of the CHIPS and Science Act were just rolled out for ME Commons hubs around the country. We were a beneficiary of one of those 8. It forced us to think regionally, which was fine. It brought together some of the best engineering schools in the country, Purdue being one, who also, by the way, has the Keith Kroc Institute for Tech Diplomacy, which is all about where tech and foreign policy meet to advance freedom. Pretty darn good and important thing. But having that CHIPS and Science Act, that type of approach where states put skin in the game, certainly the feds are putting big skin in the game, but forcing cooperation, and then on the flip side of that, a competition to where we can compete for the best solution or innovation, and then let us rest on our, on our work. And so when we're thinking about a tech hub or a biotech hub, or we're thinking about a hydrogen hub, that competition, I think, is very healthy for the country. And instead of just reflexively thinking, what regulation can I throw out there to force innovation, how about just starting with competition to force innovation? That's going to get us there sooner anyway, and it's customer-centric, rather than putting out some artificial or a goal that continues to be pushed back, because it came from solely a regulatory perspective. Okay. And so I hope that they, whoever they are, the administration, continues on that, to use Christy's word, balance of cooperation and competition at the same time.
Well, I would always encourage everybody to go to governors before you go to the federal government. I mean, I know that sounds self-serving, but I've served in federal government. I've also now been a governor, and governors can move quickly. They can make good decisions. They have better perspective. You get isolated when you're in Congress or you're in administration. It's, I saw quite quickly after several years in Congress, you can write policy, you can give great speeches and go to conferences, but governors are living in their communities. And you can make a decision and be held accountable for it the very next day. It's very much being a CEO. And that allows you to think critically about something, and then also go to those businesses and say, all right, I'm going to prove to you that I have this workforce, and that I'm going to train this workforce in this technology field. They will be there, and I'll be committed. I can back that up. Now you invest as well, and we'll partner to get this done and really facilitate it every step of the way. That's the only way you get the investment, is if you can prove you have the workforce, and the state that has the workforce is the state that's going to win this economically. And listen, South Dakota's we're growing at 10 times the national average right now. Incomes are going up in our state faster than anywhere else. We have women-owned businesses doing better than anywhere else. Obviously, I've already talked about how science and tech industry is growing. Our largest economic development projects right now are renewable fuels and making jet fuel out of corn and biodiesel products. And it's incredible, the innovation that's coming. Meanwhile, around the base, you can imagine what we've got for technology platforms and ammunition contractors that are coming around that base, as well as security operations to make sure that we're protecting people's information. It's a wonderful place to be right now. What keeps me up at night is how do I not miss an opportunity? And that's where you are so key, is while we look at this exciting new horizon of how we can use Gen AI and how we can use cybersecurity platforms, and even, we have a desire in South Dakota, Dakota State University as well, to do quantum computing and to be ahead of that game as well and make a huge investment there. That's how all this compounds on each other. We dare not miss an opportunity. We need to do it in a way that our enemies and the data can't be used against us, but that it's done in a way that we don't limit ourselves because we're too scared of those advancements. Fantastic. I see a lot of people in this country a little scared, pretending AI doesn't exist yet, where they're actually interacting with it on a daily basis.
We'd love to use these last 10 minutes we have together with you to just put your strategy hats on and now think about regional innovation, sort of with what's going right, but what would you dream about if you could just dream this perfect thing? For short, you've said a system that has the state voice with government. Talked about something that helps you unleash your university ecosystems. So both of you have discussed the importance of their adapting to targets and getting better and cooperating with other university ecosystems. A public-private partnership where both government and state have a skin in the game and yet it's competitive. And then how do we collaborate on opportunities so that if opportunities are known, they get out to the states? Some sort of system of sharing opportunities, I hear you saying. What are some other things here in these last moments that if you were just to etch a sketch and lay out an agenda for action, these are things you would love to see happen between the government, states, our institutions?
Well, I think that's a whole approach to government that I think Governor Holcomb was speaking about, just the willingness to get out of the way at times. So much for us, we're constantly, I feel like I'm on defense when it comes to the federal government. I'm not getting the chance to be on offense because I'm constantly on defense trying to make sure I'm protecting the businesses that I have, keep more dollars in their pocket, give them more opportunities to invest that back into their workforce and into their innovation. And we run into that quite often even in our medical research field. We've got some of the largest medical research facilities and individuals and companies in South Dakota as well. And so much just the bureaucracy is what hurts us. So being able to be much more nimble at the federal government level, I think is our biggest challenge every single day.
Yeah, I would just repeat and say, treat us like the laboratories that we are. Look to what's working and do more of that. It's not more profound than if I had a wish list to ask of the federal government, it would be, and I know it's a wish list, it would be to provide more certainty and continuity and stability and predictability, just like we try to do for our private sector. Because if our private sector is growing, then we can also tend to the other needs of our state. And so if the federal government had a perspective on what's working out there, what are the best practices, how do we achieve our goals quicker and address these long, lingering, vexing problems and challenges? The states are out there doing it, and I'm not shameless, but I was proud to follow Christy on TikTok. We did the same thing. I might have been number 2 or 3, but if somebody's got a good idea, we're going to acknowledge it, right? And we're not going to be left behind because we're still competing for a great sandbox to play in, right, and attract business. And so we don't sit around and dither and wait. On the same hand, I think that if the federal government would take that approach and say, and again, credit where credit's due, they have an outlook on hydrogen hubs, ME Commons, tech hubs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I agree, whether it's Midwest or Great Plains, don't just think about, because there's so much venture capital on the coasts or research and development, that it needs to stay there. Matter of fact, if you want more certainty and you want to get away from encroachment issues, we've got the 3rd biggest naval base in America. People wouldn't think that because we don't have any. We don't have any oceans, but Crane Naval Warfare Center is going to be a big. They're doing a lot of the microelectronics. We're doing hypersonics. We're addressing planogenics right in the heart of the heartland, and so that's really where the rubber meets the road. And so if we have the capital, as some on the coast have long had, we can make you proud too.
You know what this is going to sound strange, PJ, and I'm sorry, but
Please.
What I would ask you to do, the biggest thing you could do is to inspire our next generation, our kids. Because they literally need to understand the opportunities that they have in front of them. And frankly, I think a lot of them are taking it for granted right now. We're crippling our children in this country by doing everything for them. I give this speech quite often to quite a few different groups, but one of the best gifts that my dad ever gave me, he was tough, but he gave us impossible things to do. And there was many times I thought, I have no idea if he wants me to live through the day or not, just because of the jobs he would give me. The one quick story I'll just tell you is when I was about 12 years old, we had to take a truck home from the field, and I was riding with him in this semi-load of corn, and we were going down the road, and he said, I forgot I have to take the other truck home, Christy. Here, jump over here, drive this truck home, take your corners wide, and I'll meet you there. And he jumped out the door. And I remember diving across the cab, grabbing the steering wheel, because I'd never driven a semi before. I didn't have a license. I was 12 years old, and I immediately started to cry. and I just didn't know what to do, so I drove all the way home the 7 miles in the same gear, never shifted once, took the widest corners that you've ever seen. When I got into the farmyard, I didn't know how to even stop, so I just shut the truck off and let it drift to a stop. And I remember, though, that I thought, the first thing that I thought to myself was, I cannot believe that I lived. And the second thought that I had was, I bet I can drive anything now. And I didn't realize until I became an adult that that is the greatest gift that my parents gave me, is they gave us impossible things to do. And that when we completed them, that it not only helped us become problem solvers and figure things out, but it also gave us the confidence to take on the next tougher thing, the next more difficult thing. Well, if I can do that, then I bet I can do this, and I bet I can do that. And that's what I think is America's crippling factor right now, is we're not instilling that into our kids. We've started in South Dakota a governor's cyber academy, where we're giving high school students exposure to this emerging technology of cybersecurity and technology. They can even complete their first year of college in a cybersecurity degree program in high school. But we've also doing cyber camps for students in elementary through high school, but also giving them the value of work and talking about a work ethic and what's special about America. I've watched other countries start their children with tutors and extra, teaching them other second languages and third languages when they're in 3rd and 4th grade, and we're not expecting that of our children anymore. And so we will not stay leading the world in development and in these areas anymore if we don't continue to push our children and give them a vision for what is possible. So I would encourage you have the most exciting horizon of any industry I've seen out there. And it's not been my background until I got involved in some of these roles, but I would tell you, inspire the next generation and look at how you can engage and put that kind of excitement in them so they continue to want to lead the world and aren't willing to just be second to China or second to another country that's so much more heavily investing in this field.
We stand with you on inspiring the next generation. Really appreciate that perspective. And as we close, we've heard about global issues all throughout the day from beginning to end, and we wanted to bring it home with our governors. And so just with 1 minute each towards the end, just any closing thoughts on American tech power, leadership, and innovation? Governor Halcomb, over to you.
Yeah, think about how it can actually solve problems, not just talk more about it, and be a powerful force for good. And I think to Christy's point, we wake up every day as CEOs of our states, and we have very high expectations. And we measure, and we have a plan, and we have a strategy, and we turn our cards face up. We're very transparent. And we try to think bold, like Jensen was talking about, the culture of a company, trying to be sticky and keep talent and attract talent, retain it. The same thing has to be true for this country. We need to be thinking bold, and we need to be thinking big, because we have a lot of catching up to do. Yeah. And technology is going to do that. If we want to compete on the hypersonics front, we have a lot of catching up to do. So how can you be a part of that? Because we want to be your partner.
Fantastic. Governor Noem, closing thoughts.
We will invest. We will invest our resources, our time, and our energy if you do as well, and we will find the business connections. Just utilize us. I think many times people don't recognize the resources that governors can be and how we can help make those types of connections that you may need to lead the world. We have 4 students in our state that were the only Americans to go compete at the World Cyber Games and do very, very well. My goal is that soon America has a bigger presence there, that we are continuing to lead the world, and we can't do that if we don't continue to pursue opportunities that we have together. So my encouragement is our future still continues to be bright. We still lead the world, I don't want to end up in a situation where I heard on the news this morning some of our national security experts talking about the fact that America with our allies can still defeat a joined Russia and China. That America with her allies, if those two countries did team up, we could still defeat them. I want to get to a place where, whether it's on the national security front, whether it's on a medical research and delivery of healthcare needs, whether it's in a technology space or in data protection and security or innovation or AI, whatever it is, that America always will defeat our enemies. In every single space, we will win. And I think that's the kind of attitude that we need to wake up with every day and continue to talk about. We can't watch the news today without getting a defeatist attitude. I would encourage you, since you're so much the future, that instead shut the TV off, stay offline, instead continue to look at the opportunities that you have in your field and ask us how we can help, because we would love to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our governors. Thank you so much.